one of the things a lot of women in this culture, if a man doesn't shake the hand, they immediately assume, I'm unclean, the woman. Whereas a Muslim woman can't shake a male's hand. It's the same way, but the interpretation is always seen from that perspective. And this is part of the problem in our behavior as Muslims and in our articulation of our teaching, right? Is that there are gross misconceptions, not only outside of the Islamic community, but inside the Islamic community as well. And that's where a lot of the source of the problem is, that there is jahiliyyah. There is this kind of patriarchal nonsense going on that is not honoring women, right? And, the tradition says, لا يكرمهن إلا كريم ولا يهينهن إلا لئيم, that only noble men honor women and only wretched men dishonor them, So, this is part of our challenge, to start changing some of these cycles, breaking, right? And I think it's possible. It just takes a lot of work and effort. Iffa is a type of, it's chastity, but it's related to, Afifa is somebody who's vigilant about her honor, her name, right? Zina just means, it means illicit relations, whether it's adultery, which is between a married person or two married people, and fornication, which is people that aren't married. And the hadd is worse for married people, obviously, than it is for unmarried people. If you can marry the person, the rule applies. That's the general rule. If you can marry them, if there is a potential even if at the given point you can't marry them, but because of divorce or death you could marry them, it has the same application. So, my brother might be married to a woman, and at that time I can't marry her. But if my brother died or if my brother was divorced, then I could marry her. So in that situation, she's ajnabiyya. Can't marry her. Or my wife has a sister. I can't marry my wife's sister. But if there was a divorce or a death, then I could. So if there's either the possibility of marriage, immediate possibility, or potential possibility, then that is ajnabiyya for male and female. The male is ajnabi and the female is ajnabiyya. Sharia is really strict about those things. Arhamul maut, the Prophet said, brother-in-laws are death. It's bad news. Human beings are human beings. I guarantee you, within this culture, a lot of the stuff that goes on is, it's Oprah, it's not Oprah Winfrey, but the other type, soap operas, these Morich Povey or whatever, these type of things. No, it's all about, brother steals, wife, right? And stuff like that. And it's all because of these type close intimacies. It happens all the time in this culture, things like that. And most of the illicit relationships happen in workspaces. In other words, here's a woman or a man who's, he's been married 7 or 8 years, getting kind of quote unquote boring. They call it 7-year itch, and he's working and he's got this woman he's working with and she's really interesting. They have really interesting conversations and he's thinking, why can't I have a conversation like this with my wife, and then, or maybe she's never been married before and, the wife's had 2 or 3 children. She doesn't look as good as she did when he first married her, right? And this woman, she looks really good. And this is how it all happens, or the woman says, this guy's so much more interesting than my husband, or he pays attention to me. Like I was on the airplane and there was this woman with her husband was sitting across from me and they had a couple kids and he was reading, he was an MD and he was reading a magazine about football. And then, he'd been reading it for half the flight. So she says to him, is the magazine good? Do you like it? Sweetheart? Blah, blah, blah. And he's just, So I think she said it again, no response. And I just looked at her and I said, my wife hates when I do that. you know. And she said, you just get used to it, you know, right? Because I have this kind of delayed, you know, my reticular formation picks up after about 10 seconds. So she'll ask me a question when I'm reading, and then she'll just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then for about 10 seconds, I'll say, oh, I think this or that, you know, and she just shakes her head. You're not supposed to shake hands with people. And that is the hukum, you know, and sometimes, you know, that's a really difficult one. Just sometimes, because it's almost like it's become spontaneous, you know, it's just, and it's really hard to, somebody puts their hand right in front of your hand. And I mean, I had one of my sheikhs who has a lot of taqwa, but he had to go, he went on this, you know, he was sent by the government to Russia, and he went to, I think, Kazakhstan or one of Kazakhstan, I think, and he was really bothered by, you know, the protocol and things like that, because he was representing the United Arab Emirates, so there's, you know, diplomatic concerns and things. But he, when he got to Kazakhstan, when they came out, you know, they were shaking the hands, and he came to the wife of the president, you know, and his hand was there, and she just went like this, you know, like, I can't shake your hand. So it was he said it was a big shock for him just to kind of, he said, astaghfirullah, you know, that the woman didn't want to shake his hand because she was a Muslim. I think the most important thing is to try to explain. It could actually become an opportunity for da'wah. I mean, I don't think you have to go into the fact, you know, well, did you know that sexual pheromones are transmitted through touch and things like that? And I think there definitely needs to be more awareness within the community. And one of the things is, that's part of the thing about going to high schools and going to and explaining, you know, there's opportunities like 7th grade, 9th grade, going to high schools, explaining to people and bringing up that issue. It's not like kabira. It doesn't go under the mubiqat or the kaba'ir like that. But it's prohibited. There is a nahi. Yes. About the qabda. Yeah, I know. But I mean, there is a nahi, definitely. And it's taken from the ayah, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ, what's called mafhum al-awla. The Quran says lower the gaze, and mafhum al-awla in tafsir is, like for instance, in the Quran it says not to say to your parents, uff. Well, from that, the scholars take that you certainly can't hit them. If you can't say uff to them, you definitely can't hit them, because it's mafhum al-awla. It's even something you should understand even more, that if saying uff is prohibited, then certainly to say, to hit them is prohibited. And the Quran, when it says tell them to lower the eyes, well, touch is much, it's a stronger, and that's where, and there's a sound hadith that the Prophet never once touched an ajnabiya woman, ever. Ever. He did not touch any woman that he was not directly related to or had rights over in terms of, you know, sexual rights.
Look, I mean, at least in the United States, we're a pretty free society, right? So you could do pretty much anything. You could shake feet. In America, you can do the silliest things. So when you know, a woman sticks out her hand, some people are comfortable with shaking her hand and they'll quote a fatwa or something and whatever. I'm personally not comfortable shaking hands with women. I'm not giving you a fatwa. I'm just saying I'm personally not comfortable. And I'll just say, you know, we have this thing in our family where we only touch women within our family, and we have too much respect for women outside. We don't have the privilege to be able to touch them. It's a thing. It's a Muslim thing. You know? So instead of turning it into something like, ew, you kafir, I can't touch you, I turn it into, listen, just out of respect for women, unless they're in our family, we don't have the right to touch them. I hope you can respect that. And they do. We just gotta find a smart way of saying things. You know, you don't have to just say, you know, well, we believe innamal mushrikuna najas. We believe that the mushrikun are filth, and you clearly a mushrik. So you're lucky I don't have a gas mask on right now to tolerate your presence. And therefore shaking my hand is out of the question, but here's my sock, you can shake that. that's another way of going. You decide which one suits your personality more.